This episode is brought to you by Sable International, building futures beyond borders.
In essence, as South Africans, we're always trying to prove ourselves to people, even though we're really good at what we do. I think it stems from our humbleness and our willingness to try harder and just, keep our jobs as South Africans do. And my answer is always, I'm South African. I'm built to do this. It's for us, it's not even survival. It's just, this is our ethos. We're hardworking. We are happy to, work a little bit extra just to, get things done. So I definitely do work harder. But I think there's a sense of pride that you get as well when you've achieved something and you've put in the extra work and you can see that outcome that I think all South Africans, you have that wow feeling afterwards.
This episode is brought to you by Sable International, building futures beyond borders.
Welcome back to the Relocated South African. Great to have you all today. And if you follow the podcast, you'll know that we always sit down with a South African who started fresh somewhere else in the world. And today is no different. My guest has taken her considerable talent to the Netherlands. She's building a career in one of the most iconic companies in the world. She's in communications, a strategic thinker, and a South African who's clearly not afraid of a big move. So please welcome Wendy Minnie.
Thank you, Jan. Thanks for having me.
It's so lucky to have you. And both of us are quite happy here in Europe because summer is starting. So we're sorry for you guys in South Africa, but it's your turn now. So Wendy, just let's start at the beginning. Where are you from in South Africa? And where did you study and so on?
Born and bred in Cape Town. I'm proudly Cape Townian, proudly South African. Lived there all of my life till about the age of 11. My dad worked for Transnet, so we moved then around about the age of 11, we moved to Pretoria. So completed my high school there, did a bit of studies there, tempered around a bit in project management, communication, moved back to Cape Town because you always go back to where your heart feels home and happy. Got married, had kids, got divorced, got married again, and ended up working at probably one of our, at that stage, biggest alcohol beverage companies, not beer related, but wine, spirits, and RTDs. In a comms role there, I did work there for about 16 years. And in around about 2020, 2021, my husband, who happens to be in IT, started getting lots of recruitment opportunities to work in the Netherlands. And at that stage, we were a little bit not yet ready to fly the coop. And it took a considerable amount of time before we decided to make that leap. And I think one of the biggest decisions we made was we had to sit down with the entire family. I've got 2 daughters from a previous marriage. My husband has a son. And at that stage, we had to make a decision, as a family, is this something we want to consider? And at that stage, our son was still 17, so he would be allowed to travel with us. And for about a year, we did research on the Netherlands. I'm not going to lie. I think both being analytical, we'd spent an enormous amount of time researching, the country, how it works, how does schooling work, especially for our son, how will that implement him or impact him? Because at that stage, he was in grade 11, so he hadn't even finished high school yet. And we courageously, after a year, decided, okay, let's make this move. My husband was actually the one who got the job opportunity.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So we moved over with him. At that stage, the company that I was working for was in the process of going through a merger and acquisition with the company I currently work for. So there was quite a nice synergy happening in the background.
That was Distell.
That was Distell, correct,
okay.
Yeah. At that stage, Distell was being acquired by Heineken.
So you with Heineken just...
We are, yes, I'm with Heineken now. So I traded wine, spirits, and ciders, and I'm now working for beer, which is quite interesting. So we decided to make that move. And it's been a very, very interesting journey for us as a family.
We're gonna delve into it. That sounds amazing. Just a little side note on Heineken. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, and I don't know if people ever talk about it. Do you know about the kidnapping in 1983?
Yes, yeah. I think if you work for Heineken, it's one of the first things you learn about.
Because just as a background for people who don't know, that it was a chairman. He was kidnapped and with his chauffeur, I think.
Mm.
They were held for 21 days and one of the biggest ransoms ever paid. Yeah, the criminals were eventually found and they were set free and so on. But the reason why I'm just going off the point was in my banking days, I met, I think it's the guy who's married to the now major shareholder, the lady, Heineken lady.
Katerina.
And he came to South Africa. We had meetings, whatever, in the bank. And he was traveling with security in a private plane. He was a cyclist, and he brought his bike to South Africa, and he went cycling with a security guard. They were paranoid about security. Yeah, it's very interesting. Anyway, we digress. So I have to just ask you about this schooling thing, because I had guests on the show, a couple that live in the Netherlands, and they left Cape Town as well. I think he worked for Siemens, but they were sort of older when they left, also with kids that were school-going age. And they were extremely surprised and almost disappointed that they didn't have enough information, because their kids almost had to go a year back and learn Dutch, and those things they found extremely difficult. Did you have a similar experience?
Well, as I mentioned, we spent about a year doing research on it, so we were well aware of the fact that there was going to be a little bit longer for our son to settle into school. And bearing in mind he was 17 when he came over, it took us also a while to get him a place in the Taal school, because he had to go to a school to learn Dutch. I think it took about 2 or 3 months before he actually had place in the school. And surprisingly, what we found before we even moved over, we realized it would mean a year to 2 that he would basically have to put in extra work before he could continue with his school and his studies. And he actually excelled extremely well. And so one thing we found, which was beneficial for him, he excelled so well that within 8 months, he was completely bilingual, completely could speak the language. He was then moved into the MBO, which is the Middelbaan school. And there he had to do 2 years before he could get to the point where he was actually now starting to study what he wanted to study, which is IT security. But because we had spent quite a lot of time doing research on schooling, the impact that it would have on him, we weren't that surprised when we arrived here. We didn't know at the time that he would take to it so quickly. And he's excelling so amazingly well compared to his schooling in South Africa. I think he's become much more of an extrovert, much more eager to speak to people. I mean, he strikes up conversations with people randomly in Dutch, and I'm amazed. This is, the kid that I have seen in South Africa who was very timid and shy. So from a schooling perspective, I think the fact that we spent some time doing a bit of research, we joined all the prerequisite Facebook groups, to really dig in and understand what we were setting ourselves up for. But to our surprise and advantage, I suppose, he's actually thriving.
Oh, awesome. And yourselves, how are you guys coping with the language? Because they're not very keen on speaking to people who speak Afrikaans to them.
My husband works for a Dutch company, so he's had to learn Dutch as well. I think in terms of proficiency, our son he's like A-level, fantastic, he can speak Dutch. My husband can hold a conversation, albeit not as perhaps as fast as what the Dutch people speak. My Dutch, I'm still struggling with a lot. I work for a company where the business language is English, and conversations are held in English. I think the benefit of speaking Afrikaans is that you can understand people when they speak, having a Dutch conversation. And a lot of times, they'll speak Dutch and I'll speak Afrikaans, and because they just want to hear Afrikaans. I think it's the most amazing thing. That they can still follow a conversation. So I think in terms of that, we I still have a way to go, but everyone else is settling in quite well.
And Wendy, I mean, your husband found a job first, and did they help with getting you across there with visas and work stuff and
Interestingly enough, the company that recruited my husband was actually a very small company. And at that stage, they didn't even have their sponsorship license yet. So they had to go through that process of getting their license. And by the time that we were now ready to, sign on the dotted line and everything, we were already informed that they would not be able to assist with relocation costs. So we paid that ourselves. that was again one of those research decisions that we also made. And we were actually renting a property in the Netherlands while we were still in South Africa, just to secure a property, just to find a home, because we know how fast the rental market also moves. But yeah, we incurred all of those costs ourselves.
Okay. That always, a corporate move is always much easier. And did you guys battle with the red tape? I have to say that one of the funniest things for me in Holland was we when we were there for a short while, and stupidly you'd think, oh, I'm just going to buy a car. I've got money. Doesn't work like that.
No.
You've got to have an address anyway. So
yes.
And then somebody said, but you got to go to the gemeente. I said, I don't want to go to the gemeente. I don't want to go to church. I want to go to the municipality. So I said, that's the gemeente, yeah.
I think what was also helpful to us is that we actually had friends from South Africa who had actually moved to the Netherlands, and they were really, really fantastic in helping set everything up for us. And when we arrived, our rental property had zero furniture except a mattress, which they very nicely provided to us. But they also gave us all the guidance about, this is what you need to do. Go to the gemeente, get your BSN number, which everybody needs to have, get your residency card, stuff like that, how to set up bank accounts. So in terms of the red tape, we had friendly assistance and help from South Africans who have also gone through that process. And that actually helped us a lot. So if ever we had a question about red tape, we would send a quick WhatsApp. Okay, this is the process, all right, and it makes it easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for people who think that it's easy, it's never easy. That dealing bureaucracy and so on, it's probably sometimes more efficient than South Africa, but
yeah,
you still have to go through the motions of actually getting stuff done. So yeah, that's
and
interesting.
The amount of paperwork that you have to submit as well. And I thought South Africa had a lot, but it's here too.
And apostilled and my word.
Yes.
And Wendy, you mentioned that you actually work in Amsterdam, but you don't live in Amsterdam.
No.
How far are you from Amsterdam?
By train, I'm about 30 minutes. By car, it's about 20 minutes. Because my husband works for a IT company, he's an IT consultant. So he gets placed by customers. And we were renting for about a year. We realized we're not really renting people. We'd prefer to have our own property. So when it came time to actually looking to buy a house, we looked at the Dutch map, essentially, and identified where all his clients were. And then took into factor considering travel times, things like that. And we eventually settled on this beautiful little village called Relocated, which has a name connection actually with Brooklyn in the USA. And we were about 20 minutes by car from Utrecht Central. But fortunately, we have a train station as well. So it's a quick commute to Amsterdam. You don't have to worry about, traffic. You don't have to worry about parking. Quick hop on the train, take the metro, and I'm at work. So it's end to end, it's about 45 minutes. But if you think that back in South Africa, we'd probably get on a car and drive 8 hours to Port Elizabeth, 45 minutes is nothing.
That's very true. And you have all kinds of risks on the road in terms of crazy drivers and so on. And how do you find the corporate culture in Holland? How different is it from working in South Africa?
What I find interesting, and I think I'm lucky to work for a company that is a global company and really embraces diversity and inclusivity. Just in our head office alone, we have about 70 different nationalities.
Whoa.
So it's sometimes I feel like I'm working at the United Nations, because when you go to the cafeteria, lunchtime, you hear all different accents. So I think that also helps a lot. I'm able to bring what I know from South Africa, our ways of working, our understanding of diversity coming from South Africa. It really helps a lot when you work in a big company where there are different groups of people. You just find it easy to share ideas. There's always great conversations that happen lunchtime with different cultures. You get to learn more about people, their backgrounds, their traditions, where they come from, what made them move to the Netherlands in that case. So I think I'm lucky and I'm fortunate, and I realize not everybody has that experience, but I think I enjoy it. I really do.
Okay. It's I guess that sort of diversity and having
Mm,
so many people. I mean, that's part of what's interesting of what I'm doing here is just meeting and talking to
yeah.
people all over the world. And in terms of the kind of say work culture, in South
Mm,
Africa, I find that South Africans work really hard, and when they go abroad,
mm,
it's almost like they work even harder to make it, because
yeah.
you can't really not be okay there, because if your job doesn't work out, then it's going to be tough times.
Yeah.
Is that your sense? Do we work harder than them?
I think we definitely do. We have this thing, in the Netherlands, they're very, very focused on work-life balance, and burnout leave is quite a big reality. But I find I definitely work longer hours. I work a lot harder. I think in essence, as South Africans, we're always trying to prove ourselves to people, even though we're really good at what we do. I think it stems from our humbleness and our willingness to try harder and just, keep our jobs as South Africans do. My husband always comments that, if he looks at the amount of work I do and how many long hours I put in, he says a typical Dutch person might have been on burnout leave 2 or 3 times already, and I just motor on kind of thing.
Mm.
And even at work, people will say, how do you sustain this? And I think, my answer is always, I'm South African. I'm built to do this. It's for us, it's not even survival. It's just, this is our ethos. We're hardworking. We are happy to, work a little bit extra just to, get things done. So I definitely do work harder. But I think there's a sense of pride that you get as well when you've achieved something and you've put in the extra work and you can see that outcome, that I think all South Africans, you have that like wow feeling afterwards.
Very true. Just take us back to the decision when you
Huh.
guys decided to leave. You said you kind of had this feeling. Did you feel it as a push or a pull to go abroad, or was it just
For
a
us,
sense of adventure?
it was more the pull and the sense of adventure. We were both 48, my husband and I, when we moved over, so we weren't exactly spring chickens, but he had the opportunity to work in a different country to get more global experience for his IT skills. And being married to him, I could have that opportunity as well. It would mean that our son gets opportunities to, have a different kind of education. So what doors can that open for him? And I think that there's a sense of adventure as well that gives us the opportunity to travel. I mean, we've seen more of Europe being based here than what we would have had we been living in South Africa, with the costs of flights and things like that. There is a sense of adventure. It's exciting. We're also acutely aware of the fact that we have to make this work. We've decided this is the choice we've made. And if we were ever to go home, it would be, again, we'd sit down and have that family meeting, as we call it, have that joint discussion and make that decision as a family. Considering we still have 2 children back in South Africa who are adults already, we had to explain to them as well, this is the reason why we wanted to go, to get that global experience and get that exposure to different cultures as well from a work perspective, career perspective. And even they were supportive on that. So that's kind of how we ended up here. Not because South Africa is bad or we're running away from something. Quite to the contrary, we thought this is a great opportunity to take what we've learned in South Africa and take it into a different country, and then see what we can learn from that country as well.
And was it ever an opportunity or an option for them to leave as well, or not really?
My daughter, our youngest daughter, is now doing, she'll be doing her master's next year in ancient cultures in Stellenbosch. And having selected that kind of career field, there isn't much work for her to do in South Africa from that perspective. So coming to Europe would actually be better for her in terms of her career. So for her, there is opportunity down the line. And our eldest daughter, she's comfortable. She's happy with her life there. She does come to visit, but I think that's their decisions to make. We can only give them advice from our perspective and our experiences. But yeah, I think I think if you really want to take that leap, that's your choice, and we'll support them if they want to come over.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that you've traveled around Europe. Are you guys on now permanent residence? Do you have a residence card, or how do you?
We have residency cards for, I think we've still got another 2 years left on our residency cards. We are planning then to apply for citizenship. So that's our next step for that. Conscious of the fact that we would then have to give up our South African citizenship because the Dutch don't
Oh, the
allow
Dutch,
you to.
really?
The Dutch system doesn't.
Interesting.
So when you become a Dutch citizen, you have to give up other citizenships. You can only have one in their view.
That is so interesting. I wonder, is that constitutional? I thought.
In South African terms, I know that constitutionally we are relooking that from a South African perspective, but the Dutch are quite firm with their approach.
Very interesting. Wow. Okay. So at the moment, because I just know my kids who live in Ireland, a lot of their South African friends are battling to get Schengen visas. It's not the problem to get the visa; it's the problem to get an appointment. But you can freely travel around Europe on that card.
We can, yes, we do have that luxury. It's now that the UK has gone through Brexit, we obviously have to apply for visas if we want to go to, Ireland or the UK or something like that. But fortunately, we have with our Schengen access, we can still travel in the Schengen areas.
And Wendy, if you think back, I mean, it's almost 4 years now, but when you first arrived there, the first 6 months, if you think back to that, was it really difficult? Were there times when you thought, what the heck have we done?
I'll be honest. The day we arrived, we were picked up at the airport. We were taken to the rental property. Our friends were kind enough to take us to the local supermarket. We could buy some groceries, and then they left. And we were alone in this house. There was 0 alarm systems. There were no burglar bars. There were no security gates. All those glass doors and windows. And my husband, and he's probably going to talk to me about this later if I mention it, but he actually started crying. I think the realization of the whole move and landing in a foreign land kind of hit him. And he was he kind of went through that, OMG, what have we done? We've worked on this plan for so long and now we are here and now what kind of thing. Where I'm a person who's much more solution orientated. So I immediately got on the app and started ordering furniture from IKEA, which at that stage we did not realize it only came with the Hilti tool. So for about 3 weeks we were building IKEA furniture with this little Hilti tool. It's scary, but it's also fun in the same way because you learn new things about yourself. I remember as a woman growing up in South Africa, you're very security conscious. You're very aware of your surroundings. And, in those first 6 months when we landed, I could go for a walk in the neighborhood at 9:30 in the evening by myself, and it's okay. And it took me probably 6 months to get to the point where I felt safe enough to drop my guard just a little bit. But I think it takes guts. And I think South Africans have that inbred ability to adapt. And I think that's the one thing that I acutely remember from the first 6 months was our adaptability, our agility to adjust to things as they were going. And there were many moments when even I would go sit in the bathroom and think, why did we do this? And how do we get out of it? But then you look at all the benefits and the reasons why you moved, and you see your son's face when he comes home from class and he's actually mastered a Dutch conversation with someone. And then I look and I think, that's why we're doing this. We want to enrich our lives. The first 6 months were trial and error. But I think regardless of where you move in the world, the first 6 months are always trial and error. And if you stick together as a family like we did, I think you get strength from each other. I think those phone calls back home helped as well, because as much as what you were on the phone crying with family and friends, they were also like, we understand, but look at all the benefits that you're going to get. Look at the reasons why you moved. So that helped a lot, having that support from a distance from family and friends as well.
Yeah, I think, the one thing that somebody said on one of the episodes, she's a psychologist, she said, don't think that traveling abroad will heal a broken relationship. So you've got to have a good relationship when you get there. And I think what you've just said there is leaning on each other as a family. And because you got no one else, you arrive there, it's just you and your husband, your son. You just have to, kind of, if one is
make it work.
Yeah. One's down, the other one's up, and you have to make it work. So I think that's very valuable. The other thing about the security, I have to say, when we arrived, was the same thing. You just almost, even now when I go cycling and I see a lady running on the road out in the countryside, you say, oh, this is not right, but that is right. That's the way it should be, So it takes time to get used to that, but it is an amazing sense of freedom. Our doors don't even lock. We can't lock our doors. We sleep with open doors every night, but that's, I guess there's issues everywhere, but that is a massive benefit. And do you guys, where you live, obviously you commute into town.
Yeah.
Everybody in Holland cycles. Do you guys have bikes to go?
We do have bikes, actually. We have one normal bike and one electric bike because, sometimes the wind does blow and you need a little bit of vimmer to get you going. I think I've fallen a few times. So, and our son, he was like, when we landed, I will never forget it. He was like, because he had to cycle to school at that stage. And he was like adamant, like, no, he's going to cycle in the snow. It's not a problem, until he fell the first time. He went skiing on the road. So now he's a little bit, his class has also moved. So now he takes the bus as well.
Okay.
But yeah.
No, that's amazing. And it's just, I'm surprised when you look at all the cyclists in Holland that there's not a lot more accidents, but people go everywhere on their bikes.
They do everywhere. If I walk around the buildings outside and when our lunch times, the amount of people who carry things on their bikes, that just amazes me. I mean, it's the kids plus the groceries plus the dog plus the backpack all on one little 2-wheel bicycle, and off they go.
Yeah, that is amazing. Wendy, let's just talk about cost of living. Obviously, it sounds expensive, but maybe the way to look at it is to say, relative to South Africa, if you think what you earn versus what you have left at the end of the month, what is it like in comparison?
I think for us, we've got again, I think it comes back to our South African roots, this mentality of saving as well. So from our perspective, when we landed, I mean, I didn't even have a job at that stage. I only landed my job about 4 months later. We were, again, because my husband's very analytical, spreadsheet orientated, we had already looked at cost of living with the added bonus of the fact that we wanted to save every month as well, because you can't travel if you haven't got the money to do that. Cost of living, it is slightly more expensive in the Netherlands, but if you earn euros and put that into perspective, if I see the prices now of items that are for sale in Woolies, I think, oh my gosh, how can it be so expensive? But rand for euro, if you compare the two, what you would pay for groceries in South Africa and what you pay for groceries in the Netherlands, that we are living in a country which things are a little bit more expensive. But then you pay for what you get. And then you also have the freedom of choice in terms of where you shop. But I think from a cost of living perspective, it is higher than South Africa. And in the beginning, we always made the mistake of converting euro to rand. And then my husband would go, oh my God, this is very expensive. And I would just go, no, we earn euros, like think in euros. But yeah, it is slightly more expensive, if I put it to you that way, depending on what your standard of living was when you lived in South Africa. We've kind of done a like-for-like shift in that sense. So for us, we still use our household budget approach that we've used in South Africa, and literally just convert it from rands to euros. So we're ticking all the boxes in terms of our budget, put it that way.
Did you guys buy a car there, or don't you own a car?
We did buy a car. When we landed, we were very, very fortunate. We got a pay it forward car. It was a little Fiat that was probably pretty old and pretty small, but we got it for like 1,000 euros, and that was our go-to car for the first couple of months until we then actually bought a car. We coincidentally sold or passed on the little Fiat to another South African family who arrived, and I think we charged the going rate then was 900 euros. So every time the car gets passed on, it becomes 100 euros cheaper. But because we'd done our research on how mortgages work in the Netherlands, we also bought our car upfront cash. So we didn't have a monthly payment on that, because the monthly payments on your car actually influences how much you can lend from your mortgage institution. So we did buy a car as well. It is a petrol car, so we try not to drive it that often. And we're quite fortunate. Hubby has a work car for driving to clients, and that's an electric car.
Okay.
So we utilize that one a little bit more than the petrol car.
And what is the price of fuel? Just a matter of interest. Yeah, I filled up yesterday and I paid for 95. It was €1.97.
I think ours is slightly more. To be honest, I think we fill up our car maybe once a year because we don't really drive the petrol car. We're privileged to have living in a country where you have so much public transport.
Yeah.
It's sometimes easier just to hop on a train or a bus or a tram or whatever. So we do make use of public transport a lot more as well.
Okay. And I always ask this question because a cappuccino, what would you pay for a cappuccino where you are?
So if I buy a cappuccino at work, because it's subsidized and we have a barista, I pay 90 cents for a cappuccino.
No, that's not fair.
So I can't compare.
Okay, so you never buy it at a shop because
No.
I always where we in Portugal, I always feel ripped off if I have to pay €3 for a cappuccino. But
there are places in Amsterdam, especially, where you pay around about €5 for a cappuccino.
Okay.
So I think it depends on where you go. If it's more of a touristy hotspot, you'll pay a little bit more than that even.
Yeah, no, it is. I think when people travel with rands, then that's when the cost. Then when it really hits you, but when you start earning euros, it's a lot easier. And the housing, you spoke about housing and buying a house. Again, in comparison, if you have to compare, what you would get in a decent sort of gated village in South Africa to what you pay for a average house in Holland?
If we convert the amount of money that we spend on this house to South Africa, it's obviously you can't compare with the exchange rate. It's ginormous amount of money. We were fortunate in that we managed to get a end of a terrace property, and we specifically didn't buy in Amsterdam because it is so expensive. Mm-hmm. The amount that we've spent on our house here in Brooklyn compared to what we could afford in Amsterdam, we could probably afford a 2-bedroom flat in Amsterdam. And being South Africans, we have to braai. So, you have to buy a house with a backyard so you can do that. But it's you can't really compare house prices. I mean, the house we have now is a 3-story house. So your earth, your property itself is a lot smaller, and everything just goes, vertically up. That's just how houses are. Compared to South Africa, we obviously had, the double garage for the cars. You had like an indoor braai kind of thing. Yeah, the cars sleep outside, and that freaked us out a bit in the beginning as well. Like, where do you put your car?
It just drives us mad. And you see the English people, we have friends with a massive house, a big double garage. Their bikes are in the garage and their golf clubs, and the cars are outside, and think, what the sun? No, they don't think like us.
It's little things like that. Where in South Africa, you could probably get away with having a house with an ensuite and maybe another full bathroom. In the Netherlands, it's very seldom to find something like that. So you become very adapted the family bathroom routine in the morning and the evening, because there's a schedule for that as well. So there's little things which work very nicely in the Netherlands in terms of your house, but there are certain things we definitely miss about, what we had in South Africa in terms of our house.
Yeah. And we always have to ask, what do you miss most about South Africa?
Well, I think it would be cliched if I didn't say family and friends, because that's
obviously,
it's your people.
It's your people. For everyone.
I really miss spices, believe it or not. The Dutch are not really well known for food with flavor. So whenever we go back to South Africa, I think I buy most of the spices at Woolies and just, bring them all back. What I do miss, Table Mountain, the vast spans of country that you have, everything here is relatively walkable. You can go anywhere. Wimpy breakfast, some little things like that. But I mean, there are a few things that you can get here in the Netherlands because, some of the things are actually imported. But I think what I miss the most is that conversation you have with someone, a random stranger. It could be the waitress in a restaurant. She'll approach your table and she'll go, "Hi, how are you doing? How's everyone doing today?" Before she takes your order. And being South African and being in communication, I talk a lot. And I remember the first day in my new job, I went to the barista to get my 97 cappuccino. And he just said, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Hi, how are you doing?" And he's like, he was actually taken aback. He was like, "Yeah, I'm okay." I'm like, "How's your day going?" And he's like, "It's going okay." And I'm like, "Good." And then I placed my order. And now I've actually gotten to the point where when I, go to the coffee shop in the morning in the building, they were like, "Hi, Wendy, how you doing? How's it going?" And I miss that bit. The Dutch are direct and that's the way they are. And I respect that. But sometimes you miss that warmth, that, I think
more
it's
jovial.
Yes. I'm chipping away at them. I'm bringing a bit of South African warmth to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the food that's relatively bland, but I mean, there are some nice things as well, like stroopwafels and.
I think if I have to, so stroopwafels is one of those things where everyone raves about. I think if you've had enough of them, I can't consume anymore because and then I just want a really like a koeksister for instead. So no, there is, I mean, we are fortunate to have an abundance of fresh fruit and vegetables. Obviously poultry and fish and stuff like that. So from a health perspective, you can eat healthily for a relatively cheap cost as well because there's an abundance of fresh fruit and vegetables. So that is something that you can't complain about. Every now and then we get really excited when we see Granny Smith apples in the store and we know it's from South Africa. They do import quite a bit of produce as well, but we're fortunate enough to have a lot of that.
Okay. And Wendy, I mean, we're already getting towards the end. Just in terms of something, knowing what you know now, is there anything you would have done differently?
Wow. What do you think I would have done differently? Honestly, I don't think so. I think our journey has been unique, and I think that the trials and tribulations that we endured and we've gone through have only made us stronger. We're still 100% South African at heart. We still wave our South African flag, but I don't think I would have done anything differently. I think part of this journey and part of being brave enough to take on an opportunity in a different country with a different culture, with a different language. I think there's something to be celebrated about that. So, what would I have done differently? Perhaps eaten less stroopwafels.
But look, I think the thing that you said early on is that you really did your due diligence and you analyzed and so the more you do that, the less surprised you are when you arrive finally. So I think that's amazing. But the other thing that I think people sometimes maybe underestimate when you go as an call it older person is that you've built up pensions and a life in South Africa and you almost now have to start over. You can never recreate it. And that's, people talk about the cost versus the price. There's a price to be paid to go, but there's also a cost. And
there is a cost.
And maybe that is the sacrifice that you're making, but you're paying that in return for something that you feel is better, And so I always say you cannot judge anybody. People make their calls on what's best for them, and I think that's important. Maybe last question. If you have to advise a friend in South Africa that's in your shoes or same sort of time in their career, what would you say?
I say if you're looking to expand your career trajectory, if you're looking to gain that international exposure, and you have the opportunity to take on a position in another country, and if you're the kind of person who sees the benefit of that and is eager to do that, and is brave to do that, I would definitely recommend it. I think it develops you as a person. It gives you the opportunity to broaden your career horizon. My career has grown in leaps and bounds since I've arrived in the Netherlands, and I've progressed a lot further than I would have in South Africa in my role there. I think if you've got that opportunity and there's a part of you that's curious to know what would this be like, I would say take the jump. And if it doesn't work out, you can always go back home.
Excellent. And final question. Do you get a beer allowance at Heineken?
No.
No, you
No,
have
you
to
don't.
buy your beer.
We're a company that sells beer. Everybody has to buy it.
Wendy, I mean, this has been such a pleasure. Your story is what I think this podcast is about. It's courage, resilience, proving that South Africans can do their thing and hold their own anywhere in the world. Thank you for being open, generous with your time, and for joining us on the show today.
Thank you so much. And thank you for hosting this. I think this is one of those great platforms where South Africans who are sitting back home, who perhaps are debating, should we do it, should we don't? I think having this kind of platform where you can hear authentic voices from South Africans who have gone through this journey it's invaluable for people back home who are considering this move. So thank you to you for hosting this.
Thank you so much. And to everyone listening, if this episode resonated with you, please share it with fellow South African, whether they overseas, in South Africa, or somewhere in between. And if you haven't already done it, please subscribe where you listen to your favorite podcasts. And until next time, thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Sable International, building futures beyond borders.